Hey, good morning, K-ROG. This is Emma, the unique flower farmer, and this is a gotcha moment. It is not time for tough talks because I am not ready for that yet. Tune in later. This is actually a platinum silver lined edition on K-ROG. It's a one-time episode. One of my other passions is that when we do anything in life, I think we should be informed. So I'm very appreciative to the K-ROG studio, the Resource Center studio here, for letting us come in and have a conversation this morning about Amendment 3, which you will be seeing on your ballot next Tuesday. This show is being powered by Storytime Coffee.
It's so excellent that my cup is empty sitting over there. Fantastic coffee.
I appreciate it. Great way to start the morning.
Hannah is powered up already. So I have brought in the experts because I do flowers. I don't do politics or legislative issues.
But you vote, though.
But I vote.
Which is what politics is powered by.
And I believe in being informed. So my friends are here to help me this morning. This is Hannah Kelly from Wright and Webster counties, and this is BJ Tanksley, a wonderful colleague of mine. And they're going to, what we want to do is make sure you have the facts about Amendment 3.
Facts matter.
They do, and I want you to have the whole story before you make a decision. I don't know how many times I would have changed my mind if somebody just would have told me the rest of the story.
Somebody's making a lot of money on TV commercials.
It's that time of year where everybody gets tired of seeing the commercials. I think, usually by the weekend people turn the television off.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important to do a little deep dive, see what's behind it, and see what's going on. Because today we're going to talk about an issue that's on the lower part of the ballot. Everybody kind of knows where they stand on the things on the top of the ballot, but when you get to that bottom or you have to turn the page, then a lot of people call usually that week before asking questions, where do we stand on these issues?
Well, and I don't know about you, BJ, but what I see so often from a political standpoint, because I do serve in the House of Representatives for Wright and Webster County, is the fact that 3 years later people come back and they're like, if I would have known the facts. I didn't know what this was. So I'm really glad for this chance to talk about the facts this morning.
And get to spend a little time on it, not just 30 seconds or a minute at a time.
Right.
Absolutely. I think that's important. And the truth is, we do rely on the media to give us a lot of information. And as we're going to talk about a little bit today, a lot of that money comes from other places. And we need to make sure that we're informing Missouri voters.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to start the conversation off this morning with how did we even get to Amendment 3, and BJ's going to let us, there's some history. Right?
Yeah, in 2018, Missouri voters passed Amendment 1, which the proponents labeled Clean Missouri. And it was sold as a lot of ethics reform. It changed the revolving door, meaning when legislators could become lobbyists after their service. It changed campaign contribution limits, and it put a $5 cap on gifts from lobbyists to legislators. So it was a lot of good things in there, a lot of which Missouri voters agreed with. And then it also included a redistricting reform. And this was a pretty major reform that not everybody heard a lot about. It may have been their top bullet point, but it wasn't what they campaigned on. And this changed a long-standing redistricting process in the state of Missouri that had prioritized communities over competitiveness. And let's be honest, in that years of the prior redistricting, it had given us overwhelming Democrat majorities in the state legislature, and it had in recent times we have elected overwhelming Republican majorities in the state legislature. So that redistricting process in and of itself wasn't biased towards one party or the other. And so I think that's worth pointing out. But the redistricting reform that was passed as a part of Clean said that it was going to prioritize competitiveness over communities of interest in keeping compact and contiguous districts. And that's what concerns Missouri Farm Bureau members. That's who I work for. I work for Missouri Farm Bureau in legislative department. And that's what concerned our members is we don't want to see districts prioritized by competitiveness, but rather we think that areas should be represented rather than parties in the legislature.
Absolutely. Well, and if I might kind of dive a little deeper into what you're saying, is the importance of the fact that as a state representative, I represent Wright and Webster County. I don't go up to Kansas City in my district. Yep. I know I was born and raised here. I know my people. And that's part of the power of the legislature. And correct me if I'm wrong, BJ, but if Amendment 3 is not passed, we could see that is where picture changes, right?
Oh,
if
yes.
Amendment 3 is not passed. Whereas right now, the people in my district know they're going to see me at Walmart. They know that they can get a hold of me. They have my cell phone number. My grandpa, who served in the legislature over 40 years ago, said the representative is the closest to the people. Therefore, that is the beauty of the service, right?
Yeah.
And that is reality of what will change from the large picture standpoint. You're no longer going to have that closeness to the people, which then removes the policy decisions.
Absolutely. And it goes to both the accountability of seeing you at Walmart, or you also knowing and understanding the ethic and the people that you live within.
Right.
Because the Amendment 1 said that these should be competitive. If you look at current voting patterns in the state of Missouri, our urban centers typically vote Democrat, and the rural areas are overwhelmingly voting Republican. And that's not a judgment statement. That's just what our voting patterns are right now. And I think it's worth pointing out that's not always been the case. And I don't have any belief that will always be the case. Things change over time.
Right.
And so I think that's it's a little bit short-sighted, but this said that all districts have to be competitive and that there shouldn't be any wasted votes. And they said a wasted vote was any vote over 50% or any vote for the losing candidate. And I think that's just not factual anyway, because you represent everybody in your district, whether they voted for you or not.
Absolutely.
And so this Amendment 3 will take us back to the prior redistricting process for the most part. There's some changes. It makes the commission that does it bigger, which I think is better. More voices in the room is better than fewer voices in the room. Amendment 1 also put redistricting in the hands of one person, basically, and said that one person gets to draw these competitive districts for the whole state. And I see on television now there's a lot of ads about smoke-filled rooms, and this is trying to let the politicians in the room. I think that a smoke-filled room becomes that much more easy with one person driving the process rather than 20 people driving the process.
100%.
I think they're on the wrong track there when they say that one person can't be corrupted towards any political belief. I just don't think that's true. I think more voices in the room of how our district should be drawn is better. So Amendment 3 was placed on the ballot by the legislature. They came together and said the people should be able to vote on this. Now, I think it's worth pointing out that it includes several other things than just the redistricting reform.
So can we talk about just, line item, what is in Amendment 3? Line 1, line 2, line 3, kind of what it's going to look like on the ballot. I mean, there are things in it.
So I don't have the amendment copy in front of me, which I failed and should have done that. I'm sorry, guys. But just the 30,000 foot view is the fact that, as BJ said, Amendment 3 puts the redistricting process back as it was before we passed Clean Missouri. And it puts the redistricting power in the hands of a bipartisan committee, which has been even expanded beyond what it was before Clean Missouri was passed. And the bipartisan committee, yes, is appointed by the governor, whoever is in control at that time. But as you said, BJ, I think what is so vital is the fact that in government, we don't need one person making all the decisions. That is not our founding fathers' intent.
Well, and there's been some, I think I've heard a couple of people say, oh, well, if it's appointed by a partisan person, then how is it going to be a bipartisan commission? Well, it's public knowledge, and if they don't do their job right, you're going to be able to call them on the carpet on it.
And the Senate gets to confirm those people. The governor appoints them, the Senate confirms them, and I've worked around the legislature long enough. When the governor gets outside of bounds of appointing fair people to positions, the Senate will stand up and say no to an appointment. And those appointments can change. So there is bipartisan power in that. And so the Senate does get to have that oversight. In addition to the redistricting reform, there is a complete ban on gifts from lobbyists. And the other side is trying to say these are minor reforms. They left a $5 gift in there from lobbyists to legislators. And this does away with all gifts. They might try to downplay that it's only a $5 change, but it says no gifts. And that's a big deal. There's a big difference between saying, yes, you can buy a cheeseburger or a cup of coffee, and saying, no, you can't give any gifts. If some gifts are okay, then they can make that argument. But this is for no gifts at all. It also lowers campaign contribution limits by the same amount that they did when they passed Clean. But the main point, and we're not going to hide from it, is about returning us to a redistricting process that is fair for the state of Missouri and prioritizes communities over politics. There's no hiding the fact that when they passed clean, it was about making sure they called it partisan fairness, but putting party over communities in the redistricting process.
Because I think your statement about communities over politics being the heart of Amendment 3 speaks to what Missouri is about. I'm a realtor when I'm not legislating, and the beautiful thing that I see day in and day out is that people want to move here because they see that reflected in the landscape and in the heart of our people. I was discussing business with someone yesterday, and they said, people are so much nicer here. And it's why we love to call this place home, right? Because I'm 32 years old, born and raised here all my life, and the thing that I love and the reason why I want to serve is because we have incredible people. We have incredible communities that deserve and need protecting and deserve and need a voice. And that goes back to the heart of all of this. What are they not talking about on the TV commercials that are facts? The facts is if you do not pass Amendment 3, the auditor has sole nomination power to send nominees to the Senate. Yep. Nobody else can nominate this person that draws the line.
And the auditor is not, somebody once said, okay, well, why not the Secretary of State?
Very good question.
That would be logical because they're in charge of our elections.
Yeah.
And for factual statement basis, the auditor is the Democrat, the only sole Democrat in state government. Yeah. And the auditor is currently on the governor's race, running against Governor Parson. And so, there's a lot in play here. There's a lot in play, and there's a lot of volatile politics that if Amendment 3 is not passed would put politics before community.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect point. And we're in Southwest Missouri right now, but it doesn't matter if you're from the urban parts of Springfield or Kansas City or St. Louis. But when somebody would come to draw a district in that redistrict in that area, I think all communities of interest should be concerned with that. There are overwhelmingly elected Democrats that have 70, 80, 90% of the vote in their district, and there are for Republicans, and any one of those would say, I represent my community.
That's right.
And it's the same for our inner city, that they should be concerned with that, because if all districts have to be competitive, those are going to be diluted also. It doesn't matter if you're from rural Missouri, if you're from Webster or Carter County, or if you're from St. Louis City. If they dilute your interest, that's going to make different races in those areas, and representation is going to look different for everybody in that case. I've heard from the other side, this only makes a few districts more competitive. Well, I don't know how anybody would decide what's constitutional when what they put in the Constitution said all districts should be competitive, and we should get rid of what they called wasted votes, which I think is just factually wrong anyway. No vote is wasted, even if you're voting, if you were on the wrong side that time.
Again, back to the heart of this issue, what you're not seeing on the TV commercials that is very solid facts is, as you said, community over politics by voting yes and by supporting the amendment. But secondly, our founding fathers did not intend for a top-down style of government. They did not. And the beautiful thing about the legislature is half the time I don't like our outcome. I don't, I had bills before where the end result, I was like, that is not what I wanted in the very first. But that's the beauty of our structure of government, is when more heads are at the table, we get an outcome that maybe none of us like, but has been well deliberated and been well thought out and been well reviewed. And it has a product that ultimately has proven time and time again is better for the people. Our founding fathers they left England because they didn't want the monarchy style, this is what you're going to do.
And I think that's perfect, because what you're saying is a product that hopefully works for the whole state.
Yes.
Because people have different points of view.
Yes.
Whereas if you try to make them all vanilla points of view, who knows what comes out of that?
Yes.
And I think you're absolutely right, that's what makes us strong. And from being in the legislature, that not all decisions are Democrat and Republican.
That's right.
Some of them are urban and rural.
That's right.
Some of them are along all different kinds of
and
lines.
I can talk about that all day long.
Other than simply party lines, and that's what the makers of the original Clean kind of ignore. They say it would make it as if all decisions are Democrat / Republican, and that's just simply not the case when we're making policy in the state. And all of those, and that's one of the things that we've stood on, is we all have different points of view, but all of those points of view should be in Jefferson City.
That's right.
And they shouldn't all be made to look vanilla.
That is my favorite Amendment 3 commercial, is when it's just talking about points of view being represented.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything about the gifts or the money.
Right.
It was just talking about points of
The
view.
people deserve to
so.
be represented, and again, we have the House of Representatives for a reason, and we have to make sure that we maintain the representation of the mom in urban St. Louis this morning,
Yeah.
just as much as the mom in rural Webster County.
So break
know.
it down. Let's go general terms,
Yep.
plain language, total transparency. If a voter, an informed voter, votes yes on the amendment, then what is the outcome of your yes vote? What are you saying yes to?
It's a complete ban on gifts from lobbyists to legislators. It reduces the campaign contribution limits and caps them for all time. And it returns us to a redistricting process similar to what we had before, where a bipartisan commission draws districts that have to protect communities of interest, our minority districts, and then puts keeping communities whole over competitiveness. It does include competitiveness as one of the criteria, but it puts communities over competitiveness, which
Right.
we believe is the correct prioritization.
Versus a no vote. So if you go into the ballot box and you fill in the no circle, then what are the ramifications? What are you saying?
You keep the power of redistricting in the hands of the auditor's office by allowing the auditor to have sole power to nominate one person who then gets approved by the Senate to draw the redistricting lines for the state of Missouri. You keep lobbyist gifts at $5, and what else?
Campaign contributions
Campaign
remain a little higher.
contributions. Right.
And
It's the brains of this operation.
I do think it's worth pointing out, we just are finishing up a census. We will go through a redistricting process here pretty soon. And this is going to decide how those lines are drawn. This will decide how those lines are drawn.
That's a quick, another educational note. I know we're running short on time here, but a lot of folks don't understand that we have a constitutionally mandated redistricting process that we must go through every 10 years, no matter what. We have to do that. A lot of people don't understand that, and I find that interesting. And I believe it's important, again, to educate, which is the whole purpose here this morning, so knowledge is power. This process has to happen, period. There's no getting around this process.
So we have alluded to the fact that we're seeing no commercials.
Right.
Why are we seeing no commercials? BJ has some, it's public knowledge, public facts on some money.
Yeah, everything that we'll share here today or talk about comes from the Missouri Ethics Commission. Missouri Ethics Commission makes you file when you get any large donations or any of your fundraising activities, as well as how you're spending money. And when you look at who's running all the commercials, I know that our side, we're pushing for a yes vote. Those that are against Amendment 3, they have a campaign and they're running a lot more ads than we do. But just a few quick facts. They've raised over $7 million. Over 97% of that is what we title from large donors, so that's $5,000 plus. Just in the last month, they raised over $2 million. And when you look at where that money's coming from, over 80% of that is from out-of-state interest coming into Missouri and trying to change our process. Only 20% of that is from the state of Missouri. So you'll see that a couple of the big names that are donating to the no cause that are running those commercials, I'm just going to say it, is Planned Parenthood of Missouri, the Sierra Club, a group called Bread and Roses, which it's not a coffee shop, it's not a sub sandwich shop. It's actually a socialist movement from outside of the state, and they are pretty honest about where they stand on issues, and they do not stand with Missouri
You
values.
always educate me. I didn't even know that existed. Wow.
And so I think it's worth pointing out. And some of their large donors, a lot of them are Washington, D.C. interests. There's some big names that you hear across the United States, such as George Soros himself. He gave $500,000. Sorry, I have to say it. And I know it's a hot button issue, but let's be honest about who's funding these commercials.
That's right.
And
because
why?
The key right here is, BJ, none of these people know rural Missouri.
No.
Our listeners are rural Missouri.
Yeah. And I think it's worth pointing out that why would you be spending the amount of money they were, because a lot of them are trying to downplay the impacts on our district. It's worth $7 million to somebody. Why else would they be spending that amount of money
That's
to
right.
try to protect what they did
That's right.
in 2018? So that's why we're pushing for a yes, because we truly believe that the right way is about prioritizing communities over politics. And that's really what it comes down to. You can find a lot more information at the Missouri Farm Bureau Facebook page as well as our website. I don't like to dive into the politics of it. That's not the fun
You
part
can go
for
to
me,
my
but
page
we're
and
being
dive
honest.
into the politics.
Yeah, and I get that, and that can be fun. But the truth is that these are serious.
Yes.
I actually, I'll be honest with you, I take a little bit of personal offense to the clown ad because
Same.
yeah,
Thank you.
because I don't think this is laughing matter.
It's
You know,
not.
we're having a little fun with it, but I don't think it's a laughing matter.
No, you're
Who
right.
represents our people in the state capitol is not a joke. It's not something we should laugh about, and it is very, very important to every interest.
Because like you said, at the end of the day, yes, I may be registered with the Republican Party, but I should represent all people.
Yep.
And, you know, just yesterday, I dealt with a small business who needed someone to advocate for them.
Yep.
And she could call me.
Yeah. And you didn't care who they voted
I
for or
didn't
how they vote.
Right. And if the districts go how they want the districts to go that are opposed to this, they won't. My local businesses won't have someone that can be their voice.
Yeah, because this is going to stretch districts where you're going to have to go across. You're going to have to dip into the Springfield.
Right.
You're going to have to go
Right.
up to Kansas City or
Right.
Columbia to find some reliable Democrat votes to offset what is in rural Missouri overwhelmingly Republican.
Because that's what.
and that's going to dilute all interest.
Because that's what competitive districts mean.
Yep.
Is Republican and Democrat votes.
Yep.
St. Louis isn't going to have a majority Republican district.
No.
But my district is majority Republican. So just as you said, this is not fair to the majority Democrat district. It is not fair to the majority Republican district.
Yep.
It is not about politics. They want it to be about politics. This right now is about community preservation and representation.
That's the truth. You know, break it down to me, the local business owner, the mom, here in our district, that my kids are very much coming of age. In the next 10 years, they're going to be understanding what they're getting
Right.
ready to inherit.
Right. Yeah.
And they always, we're at the age, they say, Mom, it's not fair. And I bark back at them immediately. There's very few things I repeat a lot. And I say, life is not
fair.
But this deal here they want fair and competitive districts. Now, life's not fair, but we should do our best to be fair in the game of life to one another. But in this case, it is the most oxymoronic statement to me, because I don't want those other districts watered down.
Yeah.
They need theirs too.
Right. Just as much as we need a voice here in rural Missouri, urban and city areas need the voice as well.
Absolutely. And we have a lot of competitive races, and that's one of the things I think is undersold in this. We have a lot of competitive races in the state of Missouri. Some of them are in August, and some of them are in November. There's a lot of times when we talk about the issues, and we get to talk about elections. And this is about trying to put a 50-50 race in November. Not all of them are that way. And let's be quite clear, that's because one party hasn't been successful on November races for our state legislature, and that's why they're diving into this. And so they think that having you represent 17 different school districts or parts of multiple cities is easier way to be competitive in November, when there's another way to be competitive in November, and that's to listen to the voters and stand for those districts. We think that communities is more important than the party you represent.
Not only is the voice not going to be as solid, but I know kind of the schedule that Hannah keeps on not 17 school districts.
Yeah.
And if, just take using school districts as an example,
Yeah.
if she's got more than that,
Yeah.
that's trying to be fair in the game of life.
The
You're
people
gonna-
lose.
Yeah, you're going to get an ineffective representative.
Well, and nobody ever feels sorry for the state legislature, but I do think it would make their job almost impossible, because you would constantly be balancing different priorities, where at this point you know what your people believe, you know what your district needs when you go to the legislature, and so do, and this isn't just about rural, this is also about our urban centers.
Right.
They know what their cities need. They know what their school districts and their towns and their economic development needs. They know the policies that they should be advocating for. If you dilute that down, nobody does.
That's right.
So let's kind of bring it on down
Yeah.
and look into our crystal ball. We don't have
Oh, you
one of
have
those.
one?
No, I dropped it. Dropped it the other day. Post-election, what's the recourse? What's going to be the fallout?
Well, right now, I am hoping we win.
Yeah.
And
We want
that's all I'm
everybody to
gonna
go
say.
out and vote yes on 3.
Yes.
Prioritize
I
communities over
refuse to
politics.
think anything else right now.
Yeah, and that's the most important
Now,
part.
when is this? We have to constitutionally, the redistricting has
Has
to
to happen.
happen. So what's the time clock on that?
every 10 years.
It has to
Well,
be
the-
ready for the 2022 elections.
So the 141st district that I represent will be redistricted in 2022. It'll be different lines.
Well, that's when it will start. But like
The
the
process
will
begins
be
2021.
January.
So it begins pretty quickly. The
Yeah.
commission, the process will start to play itself out. The legislature, you see that through the legislative session, and then you'll see the redistricting process to be ready for 2022 elections. And this has to be ready for 2022 filing,
Right.
and so that would be March of 2022 in order for us
It's gonna
for our
happen really
August,
fast.
November elections of 2022.
So if the amendment does not pass, you're looking at redistricting with competitive districts, and you're looking at a totally different universe.
Now, is that process, like in the process, is that one that we really notice as constituents and voters, or is it kind of going to be
You will the
an
constituent
aha moment in 2022 when you get to a box somewhere and you're like, what?
Unless you're paying close attention and reading like the 7th page of the newspaper, you're probably not seeing a lot about it.
You're not gonna see if it does not pass, you will not see a lot about it until all of a sudden you're like, who's on the ballot? I don't even know him.
Yeah.
And that's when constituents, if heaven forbid it does not pass, that is when constituents will start to go, wait, what?
And a lot of the unbiased papers that have written have said this is a great experiment because there's never been a redistricting process where one person got to have the power.
I don't
A lot
like
of
the
states
sound of
actually
that.
moved towards a bipartisan commission like Missouri had. And I don't think it's worth experimenting with.
No, I don't like
10
the sound
years
of
of
that.
representation in the Capitol isn't worth experimenting with. We have a strong process now. And like I said, it's given us overwhelming Democrat majorities
It's given us
and
both.
overwhelming Republican
Right.
majorities. The process itself, in and of itself, is not biased. And that's why we're pushing for a yes vote on 3.
Well, in what lane of life do you ever do experiments based on one?
And not with something as
Not
important
smart
as your
lanes.
representation in the Capitol.
I mean, everything is based on multiple trials and multiple inputs. And,
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on to talk about this. I think,
Yes.
again, education is very important. And, I encourage everyone, whether you have a yes vote or a no vote, go to the polls. Go to the polls. Let your voice be heard. People have died for the right to vote. And
Yep.
whether we agree or disagree on issues, please let your voice be heard.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you mentioned some places where if your ears have been stirred this morning and you want to double check it, where do they go?
Missouri Farm Bureau has a website, mofb.org/yes-on-3, has a website with a lot of background information on it. Go there, do your research. We are pushing for a yes vote on 3 on November 3rd. We do think it's vitally important. And if you are interested in this, please be active on it. Contact your friends, talk to your friends, share stuff on social media. The truth is the other side, like I said, has $7 million. That's why you're seeing all the television ads. We don't have that kind of money. Our money that we have came from a fundraising letter that went out to straight Missourians.
Yep.
That's where we're funding ours with. And please go visit with your friends. Tell them to vote yes on 3.
And where can they look online, the Ethics Commission, to
Yeah,
find
the
that
Missouri
stuff
Ethics
line by
Commission,
line?
you can search through all that stuff. It's also available screenshots of it on our Facebook page, Missouri Farm Bureau's Facebook page. A lot of people are talking about it, but please get out there, share that message. The truth is we don't have the money to push it like they do. Don't be educated by a 30-second or a 1-minute ad. Get out there and do the research.
Okay, so thank you, K-ROG viewers, if you've made it this far. The group here really does want you to go at least know
Right.
the whole story of what you are voting yes or no for. That is our goal this morning. Again, huge kudos out to the K-ROG studio, supported by the Resource Center, powered by
Fueled by
Storytime.
Storytime.
Fueled by
Yes.
Storytime. Big thanks to Hannah, who is super busy, and she squeezed us in to come talk to us, and BJ, who got up way before bedtime.
Before bedtime.
Before time to get up this morning to make it down. I appreciate their expertise, their facts, their transparency on the issue. You've got a few days.
A few days.
Just
Go
a handful.
Be informed.
Thank
Just
you
be
for having
informed.
us today.
And vote.
So, So catch me later. I'm going to go home and clean the kitchen, and we're going to do tough talks, and we're going to talk about pumpkin carving tips. And everybody needs a pumpkin this weekend, right? So we'll see you later.
Bye.
Bye.